Local News Live. I'm Victoria Shirley.
And I'm Alicia Myers.
And we are going to bring you a fun treat. We are going to be talking about some unique, fun, and inspiring stories because, Alicia, sometimes we just need a palate cleanser.
We do, absolutely. But also, I think what's very cool about this segment that we're going to be doing is a lot of our stations across the nation are consistently telling those wonderful stories about their community. And sometimes, unfortunately, with other big stories, we're not able to bring you those. So this is a perfect opportunity to share some of those great things happening across our nation.
Yeah, and Alicia, while we were looking for these stories, we found a lot of them on kind of in the smaller cities. So we just had the discussion that sometimes because, you know, they don't have to be chasing constantly these crime stories and kind of the bigger stories that dominate the news cycle, they get to tell these very interesting and find these very interesting stories because they have the hookups in their communities. They have the sources.
Of course, and the smaller communities too, people know each other a lot more. And I think sometimes people are a little bit more eager to share their stories too. And all of our stations do such a good job just making sure that their community shines bright.
Yes, and so that was the focus of this segment, is we wanted to share with you the most interesting stories told by the people who know them the very best. Interesting, unique, bizarre. We have them all for you, and we're going to share them with you over the next 30 or so minutes, 30 minutes to an hour. So let's kick it off. What do you say, Alicia?
I'm ready for it. Let's go.
All right, so let's start in our station, at our station KXII in Sherman, Texas. Now, a nurse practitioner got the knock of a lifetime she lives in a rural Love County in Oklahoma, and a couple who lives nearby showed up desperately needing her help. We'll let them tell you why. Let's go ahead and get you to it.
Delivered a baby on the side of the road with a little help. Here's a conversation with the new parents and the homeowner who just happened to be a medical professional.
We were actually scheduled for induction Monday evening in Ada, so she had other plans for us. By the time we left the house, I had told him we would only make it to Ardmore, and then once we got over Cattle Guard, I knew we weren't going to make it that far. So I didn't think we'd even make it to town.
I was getting my kids ready for school. I was getting ready to go to work.
So I went up to the door and said, Lacey, my wife is having some problems. I said, I don't really know what's going on. I need you to come help me check her out.
The husband came to the door and was like, I think Whitney needs you. Could you come out and check?
She was like, you're going to have a baby right here.
And so once I was out there, it was obvious that she was not going anywhere. So we were going to have a baby right there.
I think within 15 minutes, baby was here. Considering the elements, so I was a little worried about the fall. But other than that, I felt real confident.
I was kind of scared, not going to lie. But all I knew is I had to hold her up. I had to be her support, so that was the big thing for me.
I've seen a lot of births and assisted with a lot of births, but this is definitely nothing that has ever happened to me before. It was very unexpected, obviously, but one of the most beautiful births I've ever been a part of. So I was just really honored to get to support her and be there for her.
We're super thankful for Lacey,
Yeah.
honestly. So
Yeah, she definitely saved the day.
my grandfather was the last person born on this family land, so and he thought he would be. So she changed all that for him.
All right, an inspiring story there. Lucky they had a neighbor that was a nurse practitioner to help them out that day.
Absolutely. That little girl was just ready to come out and see the world, wasn't she?
She was. She was like, I am not waiting for anything.
Absolutely. Good story to start it off there. Our next story now takes us to Missouri. One family has more than, let me make sure I get it right, 200 World War II model aircraft planes in their home. Now they're looking for a new home for that stash. Our station KMOV tells us more.
Built in a West County basement are now looking for a new home. A local man spending decades crafting and painting hundreds of World War II model planes. Now his family is looking for a permanent home for that collection. Jenna Ray has the story you'll see only on 4.
The ones he has hanging up, they all seem to have the same kind of history. Same way with here. And as you can see, it goes all the way around.
From the United States to England, Germany, Japan, and beyond.
There's every plane that was in World War II. I think he's got it.
For nearly the last year, more than 200 World War II model aircrafts have sat collecting dust in Neil Hendrick's West County basement.
Well, they didn't have any kids, and I think, married 63 years, I think. And like I said, he passed away, and so she's, I think, 83.
Neil and Sandra Hendrick lived in St. Louis for decades. Their main passion was traveling, leaving their mark on dozens of spots worldwide.
They were just very much their own little unique couple.
In their off time, Neil discovered his love for World War II planes, finding every single model, building them from scratch, painting them, and more.
The detail, the history, the information from beginning to end of the plane, or where the plane may still be at today, who flew it. Just, you don't see that a lot.
So Sherry Newcomb and Scott Moore, the Hendricks' only remaining family, reached out to News 4 for help, looking for
a good home to where people can appreciate them and hopefully display them and show the world what sometimes, you know, the little things you forget about and you miss.
A place their family can visit to relive their memories and where others can come to learn and even remember their own.
I think it's pretty amazing just that they can, especially if they had a great-grandfather or a great-uncle or something that flew, to say this is the plane they flew in that does not exist. I think Neil, in some of his wishes, would really appreciate that someone else or a lot of people could see the same vision he had as he was making these.
In Chesterfield, Jenna Ray, News 4.
Wow.
200 planes. Victoria, they said that he found every single model, he built them from scratch, he painted them and more. 200 of them. Isn't that amazing?
So when I first heard this story, I thought he had a collection, perhaps, that they were trying to find, you know, a museum to take it. But as soon as I heard that he built them and painted them himself, I just audibly said, wow.
Yeah, and it looks like he did a really good job, too. His painting skills were perfect.
Yes, they look professional. And I'm sure, like the family member said there at the end, I'm sure he is looking down on his family, very proud that they're trying to, you know, find a home for all of his hard work.
Yes, definitely. Thanks to our station KMOV for sharing that story with us.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about another unique story. This one comes in the form of recognition. Our Reno, Nevada station, KOLO, they recently highlighted a local company in their area that was featured in Time's Best Inventions of 2022 list. So their invention is basically they allow their clients to track their carbon footprints and give them real-time data regarding that. So let's go ahead and toss it to them, KOLO out of Reno, Nevada, to tell us that full story.
National recognition for a local company, a Reno-based software firm, makes a list of the top inventions of the year. Ed Pierce has this story.
It's a list any company would envy and aspire to. The best new inventions of the year. In this case, that invention is software, which addresses the pressing issue of the age and gives companies, governments, and individuals the tools to join in the solution. Based in downtown Reno, N0 has developed software which allows a client to track their carbon footprint, real-time data which allows them to make decisions.
The gas that they're putting in cars, the refrigerant in the refrigerators, or the things that they're purchasing, and give them a real-time view of that emissions data so that they can make decisions on how to reduce their impact.
Clients include casinos, data centers, other businesses, even governments. The city of Reno was among their first.
But they've been able to leverage this to bring in additional grants to the city and federal money that wouldn't otherwise have come in here. They've been able to use this to create and drive more efficiency projects throughout the city that reduce both emissions and cost.
Others, including Washoe County, have followed. It's a growing market as companies incorporate sustainability into their business plan.
When they're thinking about what are we going to purchase next year, how are we going to invest, how are we going to run our business, they think about this with an additional lens that hadn't been there before, which is how do we do that in the most sustainable or environmentally friendly way.
And find the payback goes beyond the private commitment and public image of helping address climate change.
A lot of the efforts that they can do to be more sustainable also come hand in hand with ways to reduce spend and reduce cost.
It is, of course, a positive change for the planet, and one worthy of notice from a national magazine to a local company.
But I think also for Nevada, and recognizing that great innovation is happening all around the country, and it's happening right here in Reno and Northern Nevada.
Ed Pierce, KOLO 8 News Now.
All right, some pretty cool recognition there from our station in Reno, Nevada, KOLO. All right, Alicia, I'm going to pop you up here and you're going to help us talk about this next story that actually isn't too far from Reno, at least on the same side of the country.
Right, we're still staying on the West Coast. This time we're heading up closer to the Portland area. This is a story that features a local artist who took the idea of gun violence and made it into grief origami boxes. Our station, Fox 12 up there, took a closer look at it and shows us some of the incredible boxes and also tells us a little bit more about the story.
Violence is something that concerns many, but sometimes statistics can be hard to track or follow. One local artist sought to make the problem more visible by encouraging people to put together origami boxes in remembrance of their loved ones. They're called soul boxes. Fox 12's Jeffrey Lindblom shows us how each box details the story of someone harmed by gunfire.
Yes, every single one of these boxes represents a man, woman, or child who has been killed or injured by gunfire. And there's just way too many of them.
This exhibit at the Madeline Parish Hall features 7,500 boxes, which were originally part of a display of 200,000.
And it brings to life the whole display, the people that are really behind all the numbers that we hear every day.
It could be a message of love and hope. It could be a message of anger, frustration.
Lee says having the display set up like this in such an immersive way is meant to showcase that each incident of gun violence isn't just another zero on the end of a long statistic, but instead an individual person with a family and friends.
Statistics are not emotional. People don't understand statistics.
Seeing it so in your face is a very visceral reaction of they're all people and they're all ages, all genders, all everything. I mean, it's everybody. It impacts every single person.
Lee says she kickstarted the idea after a shooting in Las Vegas in 2017, where 60 people were killed and more than 400 injured. But Lee says mass shootings are just a mere fraction of gun violence.
But suicides actually are over half.
She says the unfortunate reality is that chances are you know someone affected, like Ann Meixner, whose friend Chris committed suicide a little over a decade ago, and more recently in October, her brother was gunned down.
And I still can't wrap my heart around it. And he has two sons. One of them, the eldest is my godson.
The process of putting a soul box together is described as meditative.
His family gets to build a soul box for him, not me. But I'll make a soul box for my friend Chris.
Lee calls the display artivism, a blend of art and activism. And as a local, she knows Oregon is no stranger to gun violence.
The things that we read about are only a small portion of what is actually happening in this state.
Which is why to some, the display doesn't come as a surprise.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's shocking. And I think that's really sad.
Jeffrey Lindblom, Good Day, Oregon.
Incredible story. So amazing to see each one of those boxes so different, just like each person that they represent. If you do want to view this, you can, and you're in the Portland, Oregon area, you can head to Madeline Parish Hall in November. The art will stay up through the end of the month, of course. Our station, kptv.com, has much more information about that. Victoria?
All right, Alicia, I'm going to pop up an image for you, and I wanted to see if you, well, spoiler alert, I already told you who this is, but had you known prior who this individual is on your screen right here?
I hadn't personally until one of our stations started doing some updates on this story. A very, very cool story.
Yeah, so this is D.B. Cooper, and I will confess that I didn't really know who D.B. Cooper was until I think it was one of the Thor movies where they said Loki was D.B. Cooper as a prank. But essentially the background here is D.B. Cooper is, and that's not his real name. A lot of people have other ideas of who this actually is. He's the infamous man who threatened to have a bomb when he hijacked a Portland plane. He forced them to land and secured $200,000 in cash of ransom money. And he demanded not just the $200,000, but he also demanded parachutes, a couple parachutes, or a few parachutes, before parachuting to an unknown fate back in 1971. So I recently saw a Netflix documentary about this. So seeing this story definitely sparked my interest. So essentially they're saying that the FBI, of course, has spent nearly half a century trying to figure out who D.B. Cooper is. And now our station in Portland, Oregon, KPTV, is saying that an amateur sleuth, an expert, he calls himself a D.B. Cooper expert, says he's discovered a new suspect in the decades-old mystery. So let's find out what all of this is about.
Well, it's a fascinating and famous unsolved case with roots right here in the Pacific Northwest. The D.B. Cooper case stumped the FBI and cemented itself in pop culture. Now one true crime expert says he may have solved the mystery. Fox 12's Kendra Kent shows us.
The FBI officially closed this cold case several years ago, but there are plenty of amateur sleuths who are dedicated to solving this mystery, including one expert who says he's found a new suspect, and it's all based on D.B. Cooper's famous tie. Could one of the nation's greatest mysteries finally be solved?
This is new. This is brand new evidence.
D.B. Cooper, the infamous man who hijacked a Portland flight and secured a $200,000 ransom before parachuting to an unknown fate back in 1971. It's something the FBI spent nearly a half century investigating before giving up in 2016. But the lore of the Pacific Northwest mystery lives on, with amateur sleuths determined to crack the case. Now one of those investigators, Eric Ulis, known for his History and Discovery Channel features on the subject, says he's made a breakthrough in the case.
The tie has actually given us three very important particles that I would consider very significant.
The smoking gun, the tie D.B. Cooper left behind on the plane. Ulis says he discovered new evidence pointing to just one suspect. Ulis says he analyzed 2017 lab reports where an abundance of unique metal particles were found on the tie. From there, discovering there was just one Pennsylvania metal manufacturing company at the time with special patents on those particular chemicals.
They appear to be something tantamount to commercial DNA in that it points to a very specific company and a very specific division within the company at a very specific time.
And stunningly, Ulis says he found there were only 8 researchers at the then called Rim Crew Titanium working on those projects at the time, and they all wore the same style of clip-on ties. Ulis says it was a retired company manager who recently told him a man named Vince Peterson, this man, fit the bill for D.B. Cooper's description and was somebody who regularly traveled to the Pacific Northwest on business for the company. Ulis says Vince Peterson died back in 2002, and he has since spoken to his son.
I asked his son, I said, do you think it's at all possible that your father could have been D.B. Cooper based upon what I'm bringing here? And he said he just can't see it. He can't see his father being D.B. Cooper. To the best of his knowledge, his father was always an honest person. My hope is that maybe somebody comes out of the woodwork that knew Peterson or could provide some additional information with respect to that.
If you are interested in learning more about this case, there is the 4th annual CooperCon coming up right here at Kiggin Cedar in downtown Vancouver. That is an entire conference dedicated to exploring this mystery and lore of the Pacific Northwest. And we will post more details about the conference in the online version of this story at kptv.com. Reporting in Vancouver, Kendra Kent, Fox 12 Oregon.
Wowie, Alicia.
CooperCon.
CooperCon, can you imagine? Okay, so they think that this individual potentially could be D.B. Cooper. But though you heard they spoke with his son, and his son said he absolutely does not think that his dad was D.B. Cooper. And of course, they say the smoking gun is a tie. Okay, so the investigator, the amateur sleuth, his name is Eric Ollis, as you just heard. He's known for his History and Discovery Channel features. And he is claiming that the tie has given them important particles that he would consider very significant. So this is the tie that D.B. Cooper left behind on the plane. And again, he's saying that new evidence points to just one suspect. And they believe that Vince Peterson fits the bill for D.B. Cooper because he's a retired company manager and was someone who regularly traveled on that airline. But again, you know, he died back in 2002. So Alicia, this is kind of one of those mysteries that, you know, if they think this is the guy, is it kind of fair to be kind of throwing these accusations against someone who has passed?
Right, because the chances of finding someone that this man knew and told to are even very, very minimal. Gosh, it's such a cool story, though.
It is such a cool story. And the fact that it has just captured the attention of so many people to be able to, like, have multiple CooperCons where everyone kind of, these armchair detectives get together and kind of throw out their theories, and all of that is just fascinating.
Yeah, that's a story that, you know, there's been lots of documentaries now made about it, and obviously the CooperCon, it's just something that is kind of fun that our whole nation gets kind of involved in and trying to help solve the crime. I don't blame the son, though. I mean, if someone were to say, hey, do you think that your dad possibly did this? What? What do you say to that?
No, absolutely, yeah. If someone came up to me and said, do you think your dad hijacked a plane, had them land, got some cash, and then parachuted out of the sky?
Never to be heard from again.
Yeah. It's just a fascinating story. Like, how could this have happened in, you know, it's a very story specific to the 70s, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in this day and age, I'm sure they could pull up satellite imagery, see what happened. There are cameras everywhere, DNA everywhere. It is just, like you said, an incredibly fascinating story.
Well, nowadays you can't get on a plane without a ticket. That ticket has all the information about you, so you would definitely not get away with something like this nowadays.
And you know, D.B. Cooper, back in the day, he walked up to the ticket counter, and I think he paid, it was like $20 maybe. He just handed cash and got bought his ticket right there on the spot. And I don't think he had to give any verification, and that's why they don't have his real name.
Right, yeah.
It is just such a cool story.
Fascinating story. Great job to our station KPTV, though, too. They just kind of continue to follow up on this story.
Absolutely.
All right, so our next story, it takes us to the state of Arkansas. There is a church in that area that for nearly 1 year, they've been working to pick up the pieces on a local church after a tornado. It was actually an EF2 tornado ripped through part of that building. This was on December 10th of last year. Their construction is almost complete now, so our station KAIT caught up with them, and they show us the progress.
Rebuilding and staying together, a church damaged by a tornado last year is still waiting to open its doors. Now, Alejandra Hernandez is in the studio tonight, and she caught up with some people at the church. Tell us how that progress is going.
Monty, there was a lot of damage left to the church, and of course the rebuilding process has been a supply and money issue, but the wait to open may not be much longer.
The tornado was something that you're not prepared for, but it made us stronger people.
Eastside Baptist Church in Truman was hit by a tornado nearly a year ago, in December 2021. The church was left with major damage.
The left side of the church, or the west side of the church, it hit it pretty hard. The part we're in right now wasn't so much. It was more of the rain damage and the water after the tornado.
The damages totaled around $400,000, and the rebuild has faced its own problems.
We were encountering some of the same things that was before the tornado, with all the COVID and all the supply issues.
A project that was supposed to be finished in May is now going through November. Pastor of the church, Will Harold, said it's made the church make some compromises.
Some things we are not able to do, some things we are doing. We're sticking to things that are priority because of that, because finances is an issue.
The priority is to open the church as soon as possible. Throughout the process, churchgoers have met at different locations, but they've done their best not to forget their roots.
We've held several events here on our grounds, drive-through Easter basket giveaway during Easter time. We've done a fall festival here just recently.
But the end of this long process may be nearby. Harold said seeing the churchgoers come through those doors is something he can't wait for.
The journey has been so long. To see the people come back home, to see the people in this community come back to this church, I wouldn't be able to explain how that would feel.
The church is still working on some minor details, but they hope to open their doors as soon as next month. Live in the studio, Alejandra Hernandez, Region 8 News.
So incredible to think that they had over $400,000 worth of damage, and in just a little under a year, their community was able to gather and help that church out and reconstruct much of that building. Once again, this was in Arkansas, courtesy of our station, KAIT. Great to see there, Victoria.
Absolutely. So take a look at this image on your screen. This video, or this image rather, went viral after a coal miner got off of work and went straight to a ball game with his son because he didn't have time to get the coal particles off. He just wanted to be there for his son. And Alicia, what an incredibly heartwarming story.
Oh yes, this one's a good one too.
Yeah, and so this is courtesy of our station in Lexington, Kentucky, WKYT, and they actually got to speak with that coal miner. So let's go ahead and let them tell this story for us.
Picture of coal miner Michael McGuire went viral, seen around the world. The father was still covered in coal dust when he arrived at UK's Blue-White game. Since then, the coal miner has garnered national attention and around the globe and caught the eye of Coach Calipari.
Well, tonight he was celebrated at UK's game against Duquesne, serving as the Y during the spell-out of Kentucky. WKYT's Chad Hedrick was the only reporter to meet with that family ahead of tonight's game to talk with McGuire about the whirlwind attention that he has received. It's our top story at 11.
Thousands of Kentucky basketball fans filled the stands for home games at Rupp Arena. But at this game, there is a special guest in the crowd.
Everything's still unreal.
Michael McGuire became a Kentucky basketball star without ever stepping on the court. The Eastern Kentucky coal miner went viral last month after head coach John Calipari shared this photo of him and his son Easton at the Blue-White scrimmage in Pikeville.
That was a normal day for us, so, you know, for a normal evening out to turn into everybody being like, you're the coal miner, you're the coal miner's wife, you know, it's like, it's kind of like, yep, that's us.
Michael had gone straight from the coal mine to the scrimmage to be there with his family. Sue Kinnear took the photo that's now been seen worldwide.
We've definitely received a whole lot more people reaching out than we ever expected. It went international. People have reached out from Germany, Sweden, Italy.
Coach Cal invited the McGuires to come to a game of their choice and get the VIP treatment. They chose the Kansas game. Then Cal called again.
I actually come home from work and found out about it. I was shocked when I got home and found that out.
Meeting the team, the coaches, and seeing it all from right behind the bench.
But I think Easton actually getting to meet Oscar and see how tall he actually is up close is going to be a lot more exciting, you know, just because Easton's like, he's super tall.
But the royal treatment did not end there when Michael did step foot on the court as the special guest Y during the cheer team's spell out of Kentucky.
We've made a lot of new connections, new friends, heard some amazing stories. So it's brought a lot of joy to our hearts, and it's reached a lot of people just by Michael being a dad who shows up, you know, and who's there, because that's not something that always happens in present day. And so I'm glad he knows he's appreciated for what he does for his family.
A man and his family who are a perfect example of the heart and soul of hardworking Kentuckians and Big Blue Nation.
Oh, that was our Chad Hedrick reporting. You know, that's what it's about, family at the end of the day, right? So be celebrated for that.
Love that line.
Well, Coach Calipari talked about the family after the game. He says it was a feel-good moment to see the original picture and be able to give the family a special trip to Lexington to see UK. And it's not the only one, because they're going to be back. They chose the Kansas game in January.
They had a whirlwind today, so maybe they'll be a little more relaxed.
A little more calm maybe for them then.
Exactly.
All right, what an amazing story. And actually, I want to show everyone this screen grab, because how fun is that? I mean, I just love them getting love him getting recognition for being a dad who shows up. And also, you know, as a normal guy, I wonder how he's feeling about all of the attention.
Yeah, the standing ovation too is very cool. I just love stories like this where your ordinary person who's just living his life, doesn't think anything different about it, just gets such special treatment just for, you know, doing stuff he does every single day.
Yeah, and that's what his wife said. It was just a normal day for us, and one photo went viral. So, you know, I hope they get season passes. I hope they continue to roll out the royal treatment for him, because he got them a lot of publicity.
Yeah, it'd be cool too to see if maybe he could get some of his fellow coal miners to be able to come to some of those games as well, share a little bit of the love.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we are going to stick close to Local News Live headquarters, Alicia, for this next story.
Absolutely. We are going to our station WOWT out of Omaha. However, this story kind of takes us down south a little bit, specifically to Florida. So there is a couple from Waterloo, Nebraska, who actually had just moved their shrimp restaurant to Fort Myers Beach just a few months ago. After, guess what? They were completely wiped out due to a hurricane. So Huskers are now rallying around this couple and showing their love from across the nation. Our station WOWT tells us more.
In ravaged Florida back in September, the heartbreak could be felt here in Nebraska. A Waterloo couple moved their shrimp restaurant to Fort Myers Beach just months before the storm hit and wiped out their business. Mike McKnight tells us recovery is starting here at home.
In late September, Hurricane Ian destroyed their Rude Shrimp restaurant, but not their dream. So TJ Hosoffel and Lisa Laners plan to pick up the pieces by picking up and moving these retrofitted containers from Waterloo, Nebraska.
So we're setting up those containers where our restaurant was, and the food truck is not going to be mobile. It's going to serve as my kitchen to serve the container restaurant concept that we had here in Waterloo down on the beach.
The food truck is already there, but hiring a flatbed trucker to move the container 1,600 miles won't be cheap. So friends are getting on board.
They didn't ask us if they could put on this fundraiser. They just kind of told us they were doing it.
Shrimp tacos are on the menu, and Rude Shrimp clothing will be for sale. Since the hurricane crushed the Florida restaurant, Nebraskans have been among their best online customers.
From all over the state, we've sent stuff out to small towns, and you'd think it would just be people that you know, but it's been all over.
The restaurant's logo may sound rude, but the shrimp servers say it's a popular catchphrase. And the restaurant owners have taken a variation of their signature line to help raise about $20,000 so they can transport these containers down to Fort Myers and hopefully start serving seafood again within a few weeks. TJ carries his emotions on his sleeve.
Eat me, Ian. We took our tagline and added Ian to it, and my wife and I don't lose, so we'll be back.
But defiance in the face of the hurricane aftermath will become gratitude Monday night when friends remind the couple that no matter where they are, Nebraskans stick together in all kinds of weather.
It's going to take us a long time to handwrite these thank yous.
On your side, Mike McKnight, 6 News.
The fundraiser for the owners of Rude Shrimp Company is happening Monday at Farmer Brown's in Waterloo. It's going to take place from 5 to 9 p.m. And
of course, if you'd like to help out that company just a little bit, you can always head to WOWT.com for a little bit more information. I would like to see, Victoria, if they could ship some of those tacos to our studio, because those tacos, I would definitely eat me. Oh my gosh, those looked so good.
I love that line in the story that said, the title of the company may seem rude.
Right, right.
So
and
funny.
then how they kind of, you know, instead of bite me, Ian, eat me, Ian.
Yeah.
That was very clever.
Oh man, what terrible timing though I feel for them moving their business right into the path of a hurricane. If only they had had a crystal ball.
Right. But like he said, he goes, he and my wife, we don't lose.
That's
so
true.
we're getting back on track and we're going to make it.
They are resilient,
Yes.
and I love that. All right, we're going to go now to our East Texas station, KLTV, and we love a good feature story, right, Alicia?
Yes.
And this kind of falls into that category we talked to you about at the very top, that we want to tell people, cool people doing cool things. And so an East Texas photographer is reflecting back on his multi-decade career as a sports photographer, and our station KLTV is telling his story.
In Holly Lake Ranch today, let's talk photography. As you see over my shoulder, there's some beautiful photographs here. But I want to introduce you to somebody. Now, if the name Gary Edwards doesn't mean anything to you right away, that's not unusual. But it's a sure bet that sometime in your life you have probably seen one of his iconic photographs. And he joins me now here at his Holly Lake Ranch home. Gary Edwards. Gary, tell me a little bit about this. When did you get started in photography?
Well, it actually started in the Air Force, in Shaw Air Force Base, South Carolina, where they taught me how to be a photographer. And I took that and I went to work after I got out of the Air Force for my hometown newspaper in Corning, New York. And then I got to stringing. That's part-time work for United Press International. And I got lucky.
Let's tell everybody now, United Press International, for those of us that are old enough to remember, they were the big boys on the block.
And they went bankrupt.
But they were the big boys on the block.
It wasn't funny then.
They took photographs of all of these wonderful sporting events and things of that nature. But you, and we're going to explain this, one particular photograph put you on the map.
Well, it was a Cornell University football game with Princeton. And Princeton was going to kick a 54-yard field goal. And Cornell stood their defensive tackles up, and the defensive backs stood up on their shoulder pads. And I took a picture of that from the end zone, and that went all over the United States. That was a picture for UPI.
Literally, and we're seeing that picture right now, as literally that puts you on the map. It was such an unusual picture. I'm guessing they said, we've got to have this one.
It got people's attention. And you have to get somebody's attention to succeed in anything. And the business that I was in, ultimately got into, is an ego-driven business. Yeah, I know. Where I think I can shoot a better picture than you, and I better be able to deliver.
Right, and a very extremely competitive, and we're going to get into that part of it. Now, a little bit of history on Gary here. You were actually born in Canada.
Born in Toronto, Canada.
And you actually migrated, I guess, to New York.
My folks moved to the United States. They call it the States. Into a place called West Clarksville, New York in 1948. I was about to turn 8 years old. So I've been here since, and we moved from there to Corning, New York, and that's where I graduated from high school and went into the Air Force from there, and then learned photography, the basics of photography.
Now we talk about photography. Gary has that unique ability, that unique trait that most people don't have, which is he has an eye for the iconic shot. And I'm going to explain that too. We talk about competitiveness in a lot of areas, and you say that was a big part of what you were.
Well, if you wanted to be invited back to an event, you better be pretty good. And otherwise, say invited. There were editors who would put together staffs to cover cover Super Bowls and Final Fours and events like that, and they chose the photographers they wanted. So if you went once and you didn't do very well, you didn't get to go a second time. And I went to 14 Super Bowls, went to 8 Masters golf tournaments, and so I performed, I think, fairly well. I produced enough good pictures that they kept asking me to come back. Now, some of those things, this business is terribly ego-driven, and it's very competitive. The competition between photographers, good photographers, on the sidelines is every bit as fierce as the competition on the basketball court or the football field. Because the way you tell if you won the day's competition is you looked up the next morning, you picked up the newspaper, and whoever pictures were in the newspapers, that's who won.
And
It's cut and dried.
And absolutely. Now, what we're going to see is a collage here. Gary is going to narrate as I explain this. Some of these pictures are iconic. Let's talk about particularly the Jack Nicklaus picture. A lot of your pictures have made covers of magazines, covers of Sports Illustrated and things of that nature. But talk about some of these iconic shots. The Nicklaus shot.
The Nicklaus picture, Jack was making his run. And I was trying to keep up, and in Augusta you have to work outside the lines. You can't walk inside, so it's very difficult to get in position. And he's going up that hole, I think it was 17, and I was on the wrong side of the green. I asked somebody, "Where's Nicklaus's ball?" And the crowd told me, and I ran around to the other side of the green, and there was a TV camera on a stand there. And I dove in there, and I literally got in position 10 seconds before he putted. If I'd been 15 seconds later, I'd never have that picture. This is where luck comes into it. If he misses the putt, that picture never sees the light of day. Yeah. And so I worked hard. There were 4 of us that essentially got the same picture, and here's where I think good fortune really comes into play again. 1986, very few newspapers used color. Those who did use color, it took them 30 minutes, 40 minutes, took them an extra amount of time. It's late on a Sunday afternoon. I'm the only one of the 4 photographers shooting black and white. The AP editor shipped his film unprocessed because he didn't know what had happened on 17. They shipped their film to New York and only went with the film from the 18th green. So if you were a newspaper and you wanted to use a picture of Nicklaus birdieing 17, you didn't have a choice. Mine was it. That's all.
How big is what Gary Edwards did over a lifetime, over a 50-year career? It's safe to say you've taken thousands and thousands of photographs, and you've always been very selective about what photograph you wanted to.
Yeah, you never got to see the bad ones. And there were plenty of those. Okay, for instance, a picture I shot in a Super Bowl of the longest touchdown run in the history of the game. Marcus Allen. The frame before it's out of focus and the frame after it's out of focus. The frame that counted was in focus. Here we go again. If he doesn't score that long touchdown run, if I don't get lucky and get that one frame in focus, who knows?
What's this been like for you, Mr. Edwards? I mean, there are some people that could maybe go an entire career and maybe only get one shot that is memorable to them. You've had a tremendous, what's it been like for you to go through all of this?
I moved to Dallas in 1969. I had already had a year with UPI photography in Philadelphia with Wilt Chamberlain, visiting Bill Russell and coming into town and those battles that went on. And I was getting my feet wet and feeling pretty good about things. And then I got lucky. I got transferred to Dallas, and they were just at the very beginning of a newspaper war between the Dallas Times-Herald and the Dallas Morning News. And they both were filling their photo staffs with the very best photographers they could find. And both the Associated Press and UPI photographers were in competition with the Jay Dickmans and the Skeeter Haglers of the Dallas Times-Herald and Bob Jackson and that group. And it pushed us and made us better photographers. If you wanted to survive, if you wanted to be able to hold your head up and say, I'm pretty good, I can do this, you had to compete with the best in the entire United States. So I got very fortunate in that regard. They pushed and shoved. I competed with and against, and I lost a lot of battles with those guys. They were good, but I also won my share, you know, and it was kind of, as I look back.
It's got to be very satisfying for you, didn't it?
As I look back, it was a stressful time. I didn't necessarily enjoy it then as much as I enjoy it now, because I can look at the pictures I produced and say, hey, you were better than you gave yourself credit for. At the same time, even at 82, it's hard to remain humble when you think of yourself as being pretty good. I think I did a pretty good job overall. A fellow said, you need to come in here and say hello. And he took me into the press, the other section of the press box, and there stood Lyndon Johnson. And the ex-president of the United States stuck his hand out and said, hi, Gary, how are you? Now, my head got like this. And I mumbled and stumbled and said, how are you? And then went about and I got to thinking about it later. He didn't know my name. He just recognized a photographer that had covered him in the campaigns over the years. And he said to this PR guy there at TCU, what's that photographer's name? And the guy said, oh, that's Gary Edwards with UPI. And so now he acts like he knows me and we're his brothers, you know. And golly gee, you know.
So,
but that was a really neat moment in life.
Okay, so a great memory for you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Gary, appreciate you talking to me, and we will have much more on this. Now you know who Gary Edwards is, and we'll have more on this story tonight.
All right, if you want to watch more of that or read more about that talented photographer and him reflecting back on his lifetime, be sure to go to kltv.com. This next story I'm excited about, Alicia. Let's pop her up.
All right, yes, that guy was so creative. Oh my gosh, I loved hearing his stories about some of those iconic shots too.
Yeah.
Great story there. All right, so our next story takes us to Portland, Oregon. There is a filmmaker there who's thinking outside the box, and he is producing something that many of us may think is scary, and that's probably what he's going for, but he's not scared of it. He is creating a Bigfoot horror movie. He's doing this all on his own with a few friends, and the people that he has as actors, well, he says it's a special kind of a movie that has never been done before in his area. Let's listen to KPTV for those details.
Have you had a Sasquatch sighting lately? Well, he may have just been leaving a film set.
Yeah, Fox News' Io Elise is here to tell us more about an upcoming film that stars this infamous creature. Hi, Io.
Hi, and yeah, the Northwest loves Bigfoot, which makes it a perfect place to film a horror movie about him. I stopped by a local film set to learn more about the filmmakers behind it.
There are many beliefs around Bigfoot, like he's a primate wandering the forest, or...
And some people believe that Bigfoot is a spiritual being, an entity with powers, and who protects the forest. And the latter is the route that we went.
That's Portland-based director John Garcia. He's talking about his latest film. It's currently untitled but referred to as The Bigfoot Project. It's a fish out of water story where a couple from Miami moved to Oregon looking for a new start, but end up having mysterious and dangerous encounters.
Cut. What's the work here? You see that? Yeah. That's the spooky thing I told you about.
The movie is Latino-led behind and in front of the camera, and the lead actors, Crystal Millie Valdez and Ernesto Reyes, say it's a memorable experience.
It's exciting to have representation that is also like, why not have Latinos as leads in a horror genre and make it just about two people. And John was really amazing to let us kind of bring ourselves, our culture, our experiences, our heritage into building Carla and Dean, I would say.
The director co-wrote the movie and considers it his pandemic project. It fulfills his dream of making a creature feature, something he had always hoped to do since graduating from PSU's film school.
PSU keeps being a constant beacon of support for me as a filmmaker, not only as a graduate of that film program, one of the first graduates, but also as a filmmaker now.
Garcia even had current students and recent graduates from the program help while shooting the movie. And with this being the first time in Oregon for Valdez and the second time for Reyes, they're already ready to come back.
So I feel like it's a great place for artists to create something new.
To grow.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the film will have a new title by the time it's released next year, so keep your eye out on Dark Star Pictures online for updates. We'll have a link at kptv.com. Back to you.
Where was this shot, Io?
Happy Valley on a
You never know, right?
That looks like such a good movie. So excited. I can't wait to see it when it comes out. I love especially the drive that they have just to go out and make this movie by themselves and prove themselves that they can do such a fun, spooky movie. Plus Bigfoot. Victoria, do you believe in Sasquatch, Bigfoot, all of that?
You know what? I don't think so.
I don't know if I believe that there's one. I believe there may be like a lot of them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe like long lost Neanderthal.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know.
Just still hanging around.
But I do love the twist to that story. They aren't just making a movie about a cool topic. They are, making it Latino related. I loved what that actress said. She said, why not have two Latino leads doing a horror movie genre? So, love it.
Love it. Gonna be a cool movie to see.
Absolutely. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, Alicia, because you are, correct me if I'm wrong, born and raised in Nebraska?
I am, yes.
All right, Nebraska native. So our next story comes from our station, KOLN, out of Lincoln, Nebraska. They're talking about a creative use of a grain bin in North Platte. So have you been to North Platte?
I have been to North Platte. It's been a while, but also grew up on a farm too, so very familiar with grain bins.
Okay, so what is a grain bin?
So grain bin is essentially a bin that you store your grain in. So after it comes out of the field, you need to kind of get all the moisture out of it, and you store it there until you go and sell it.
Awesome. So I imagine North Platte's very rural, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So this is kind of cool. So this couple or this family, they are using a grain bin to make a coffee shop, a coffee cafe inside that grain bin. So I'm a sucker for repurposing anything. Like I loved, there was a story I reported on in one of my markets where they turned an old fire station into a brewery. So I love repurposing buildings. So this is exciting and I can't wait to hear about it. So let's go to our station in Lincoln, Nebraska for this one.
Pure Nebraska, sometimes it is nice to take a little coffee break.
Yeah, we always enjoy that. If you are looking for a fun experience in North Platte, then look no further than the Coffee Bin. In this segment, we get the story behind a place where you can feel like you are definitely on the farm while having your gourmet coffee.
If you love coffee and the country, then both come together quite nicely in North Platte.
This is the Coffee Bin.
It's where you can experience gourmet coffee, and the business is housed in a grain bin.
It's an addition that we put onto the garden center that we have
just to the west, and we did this several years ago.
Owner Randy Billingsley says he got an idea to do this after attending a garden show in Chicago.
There was a lot of interest in different things that would make it a destination at the garden centers, and that's when it first inspired us to add a coffee shop.
Randy planned to make his coffee shop with grain bins to represent the agricultural heart of Nebraska.
We use two 18-foot grain bins. They're used grain bins, and they were originally used in a farm south of Curtis, and we brought them up here and reconstructed them and added the stick structure between them. It's fully insulated with close-cell polyurethane foam and sheetrocked on the inside of the grain bins. It was quite a task to get it put together.
But as you can see, the work was well worth it, and customers really enjoy visiting.
It actually draws a lot of people off of the interstate cut over here because it's a point of interest, and around the country there's been interest over the last 10 years of repurposing grain silos and grain bins to make houses and different structures with. So that's what kind of inspired me to design this and put it together.
It took some time to build this point of interest.
I was also running the garden center and doing landscaping at the same time. So, you know, it was a period of about a year and a half, almost 2 years to construct.
Owners say a former North Platte business known as Java Junction played a big role in helping get the coffee bin up and running. Java Junction can now be found in Kearney. At the coffee bin, there's plenty on the menu.
We do some breakfast items. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays we do breakfast burritos. Thursdays and Sundays we do biscuits and gravy. And on Tuesdays and Saturdays there's breakfast sandwiches. Then for the lunch menus, it depends on what season it is. In the wintertime, we obviously have soups and other sandwiches available, as well as salads. We do some wraps.
And of course, there's coffee.
We probably offer more different drinks than most coffee shops.
And with all that on the menu, you can certainly get a taste of the good life here in North Platte at the Coffee Bin.
Taste of the good life. That sounds phenomenal,
Yes,
Alicia.
I just said to Victoria, I want one of everything on that menu.
Yes.
It sounds so good right now.
And I love the creativity involved in just transforming something used for a different purpose for something totally new. I love that.
Plus, like he said, a lot of people see it from the highway, from the interstate, and they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's swing by and get ourselves a drink.
Yeah, and a great feature for that community as well. So
Yes.
a reason for people kind of in the more metropolitan areas to venture out and visit some of these more rural communities. So love that. Again, another example of our stations telling the stories that they know the best because they live in those communities.
Yeah, we have more than 100 stations all across Gray, and each one of them does such a great job of focusing on the community and really just showing everyone what's so unique about where they live.
Absolutely. That's what's the best about Local News Live, because we can then take those stories and share them with you on a national scale. So we thank you so much for sticking with us as we go through, as we've gone through the unique, fun, and inspiring stories across our great nation.
It was a fun look.
It was a fun look. Well, I'm Victoria Shirley. Joining me is Alicia Myers, and we thank you so much for joining us over the past, I would say, hour, course of the hour. So we will be right back.